All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Coffee with Kevin. I am very fortunate to be sitting here on the other line with a expert in one of the kind of hottest and growing fields in our space right now. It's actually kind of grown into the aesthetic space, starting regenerative medicine. I have Nico Misleh here, and he's going to talk to us about HRT and what are we talking about and what's the hype and why is everyone talking about it? And JFK is talking about it. I mean, everyone's talking about it. So, it's good to finally get an expert because I need to learn more about it and understand. I'm sure a lot of our listeners as well. So, welcome. Give me a little background. Who are you?
Kevin,
What are you? Why are you?
it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. Again, my name is Nico. I'm a nurse practitioner by trade, family nurse practitioner by trade. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio with my wife and kids, and I'm also a clinic owner. But my pride and joy has always been in education. And I've been fortunate enough to create and establish HRT University, which is our fully joint accredited HRT course and ecosystem. So, a long time ago, Kevin, not that long ago, really, but about 10 years ago when I first graduated from NP school, I knew right away, like I didn't want to do the whole primary care stuff. Like I just felt like that was so tedious and also just you're just working for the insurance at the time. And so I wanted to do something else. And I was really fortunate to land in the kind of wellness and integrative medicine world was probably what it was more focused on then. And now we might call it functional medicine. But I just had some crazy good mentors who were really interested in HRT. We're talking these were the guys back in the 90s and even in the early 2000s who were prescribing hormones to men and women who needed it. And amidst all the controversy of what we would consider like the Women's Health Initiative trial, which was this big to do, and that really put the kibosh on HRT largely for, arguably the past 10, 20 years, which was to say that HRT was somehow a bad guy, that it was causing cancer and it was causing you to have a stroke and you'd grow a third arm and all these terrible things would befall you if you proceeded with HRT. And what everybody ought to know is that that couldn't be further from the truth. And even the FDA and like you were mentioning, RFK has come out and said, hey, this is ridiculous. The science and the literature has been saying for the past 30 years that this is safe, it's effective, and it's amazing for patients. And so I think as you've kind of experienced now, even on the aesthetic side of things, we're seeing really competent, really engaged clinicians who are having patients come in and inquire, hey, Stacy, I love getting my toxin filler from you and I trust you and I love to work with you. Do you know anything about this HRT stuff? I don't want to have hot flashes and night sweats. And my doctor's saying, well, that's just part of the deal. That's what happens when you age. So all of a sudden we're at this renaissance again, where HRT's the hot thing. And I think thing about HRT, and I think the same is true for aesthetics, is it's here to stay. It's not woo-woo. It's not some fad. In fact, I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
For the uneducated, because we'll start from the beginning and go all the way up. And I was just to tell everyone, I was very fortunate to listen to Nico do a talk at an event in the Northeast and got me excited and interested and educated me a little bit more because I think like a lot of people, like you said, everyone kind of went away from it. We're a little nervous about it. Is it real? Is it not? So let's just get down to the base. What is HRT? What
Yep.
really is HRT?
Yeah, absolutely. HRT is literally replacing hormones that human beings have lost. So, quite simply, hormone replacement therapy. A lot of people might find this funny or crazy to think about, but melatonin, if you've ever taken melatonin at bedtime to help you sleep, and you can get that stuff at your local Walgreens or pharmacy, that's technically a hormone, and you're replacing that at bedtime. So other hormones that we're talking about would be what we consider sex hormones. So those would be things like estradiol, which would be your major estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? So there are hormones for men and for women. And when we replace these hormones, what we're essentially doing is trying to restore that balance. Over time, what we definitely know is that as we, as men and women, continue to age, we will lose our hormones. That's just a natural process of aging. Our gonads, like our ovaries and our testes, start to atrophy, and all these hormones dwindle away. And with those hormones goes our muscle and lean muscle mass. It goes, it starts affecting our brain, our cognition, our memory, It can affect our cardiovascular system, insulin sensitivity. And so when we look at hormone replacement therapy, what we're doing is saying, hey, is there a way in which I can take a what we call bioidentical hormone? And that's important too. These are hormones that literally look exactly like the hormones. There is no difference practically at all with the hormone that you would take, say, in a capsule or maybe in an injection versus what is made inside your own body. Can we replace that? And do we see, if we do that, do we see it restore and rejuvenate your health? And that is exactly what we see in the literature. So again, to clarify, this is not anti-aging in the fact that this is not going to help you live to 3,000 years old, or it's not going to reverse your gray hair and all that stuff. What it really is going to do is give you an amazing quality of life and absolutely reduce things like morbidity and mortality to an effect of, hey, maybe you're not going to die when you slip and break your hip and you're 62 years old, or maybe you're not going to be at the exact risk of your counterpart who's also 50, but doesn't have testosterone and now is at greater risk of heart disease and things of that nature.
Let me ask you
Please.
another question. So I talked to someone, I can't remember who I was talking, someone that was maybe in the HRT. The difference between oral,
Mhm.
injected, pellets.
There's a lot of differences. I would say for most men, testosterone injections or topical creams make the most sense.
Okay.
Pellets work, but they have a very sharp peak. Your levels climb, 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 climb really, really high. And then over a period of 3 months, it'll drop. And by the end of that 3 months, you're just feeling like absolute crap. So with injections, most of my guys inject twice a week. The old school method was once a week, which is kind of like a pellet at that point. Twice a week is best. Topical creams, believe it or not, those are my favorite. I think they work fantastic. It's a little more, I don't want to say arduous, but you got to apply it twice a day typically. It's a piece of cake, no ouch, and it works awesome. The difference is, again, you get it from a compounding pharmacy. We can directly enhance your dose based on your needs. Whereas if I get it from Walgreens, it's this crappy gel. It barely works, and it's only giving you like this much testosterone. We really want that much. So again, that's kind of the nice part about the compounders.
I own a med spa or I'm a plastic surgeon dermatologist. Why do I really need to know and why do I need to be involved?
Yo, I love that question. I think there's multiple reasons. I would say number one, let's just look at it at its face value. Hormones are foundational to our health. So what I mean by that again is that these hormones like estradiol or progesterone or testosterone, they all make meaningful impacts across practically in our entire system. So not only do we see, say, estradiol prevent things like Alzheimer's disease in women, but we also know that estradiol has a meaningful impact on something called collagen synthesis. So, quite literally, how do we keep your face from aging and getting wrinkly and the skin getting kind of loose and all that stuff? Well, estradiol in particular, is one of the best foundational ways in which we could help optimize around that. So, if you're an aesthetic provider, if you're doing tox filler, if you're doing plastic surgery, whatever, I'm looking at this. If I were you, I would say, if I could even gain an extra 10%, 20% on my outcomes for my patients, if I could help my filler and tox maybe last longer or be more effective, or if my surgeries have just better outcomes in general, I'd probably put a lot of my own intuition and education and investment behind that. And that's exactly what I'm imploring a lot of our aesthetics friends and brothers and sisters to be doing. Because again, we're in a world where, like it or not, it's competitive as heck out there. Everybody's afraid that aesthetics is getting saturated. And I just don't think that's true. What I think is true is that patients are now expecting more and they want more and they always will. And I want my brothers and sisters on the other side of the aisle in the aesthetics world to say, hey, come on in. The water's warm, and this is a great addition to what you're already doing, and it's going to help improve those outcomes.
Okay, so now let's say I'm practice owner and I'm ready. I'm
Mhm.
in. How do I get started? Like what do I do? If I want to integrate this, how does the practice get that integrated?
Absolutely. So, I mean, again, there's a million ways to skin the cat here. I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent, and again, I'll show my cards here and play my bias, but I'm a huge fan of education. I speak to providers in the aesthetics world about this all the time. For example, I always joke and say, hey, look, if I went down the road and took an aesthetics class for 4 hours and then started saying I was a master injector or something like that, I think a lot of you folks who really are master injectors would take great offense to that, right? Because there's a real art and skill behind it, and it takes time and pressure and all that sorts of stuff and education. Well, I say the same thing back to you. Sure, there's an easy way to do HRT, which would be, you take some nominal course for 3 hours and you get a little sticker on a badge and whatever. But HRT, much like aesthetics, is extremely, extremely, extremely in depth and detailed and nuanced. And especially when you're treating women, there's all sorts of things that can happen. And again, it is a totally safe and effective therapy, but knowing what you're doing is what separates that from being safe and effective to being just god awful. So taking a course like HRT University would be an amazing way to get started. And also just dip your toes in. Is this something you're really going to like? Is this something you're going to enjoy? You'll know really quickly whether or not that's true. And then finding ways to implement it, right? So we're kind of working on that side of things in terms of the business. Like, I'm a big fan of recurring revenue models, and I think HRT fits that better than just about anything else. HRT is a lifelong therapy. This is a great way, if you don't already have a recurring revenue model in your practice, to go ahead and implement that. And so again, you're getting kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting this nice recurring revenue. You've got some stable income, and you've got some really happy patients who are already continuing and continuing to spend more and more money in your clinic doing their aesthetic stuff.
Well, it's interesting because obviously you have the university,
Mhm.
and I think that's fantastic. And yeah, I've heard a lot of colleagues and friends that have actually attended university and came out with really educated, understand what they're talking about. But I think as let me go away from the practitioner, but as a patient, say I'm a patient,
Mhm.
there's a lot of noise out there. And with AI and everything telling you what's the best of the best, and people self-diagnosing. I was at an event and they were talking about AI is now self-diagnosing or helping you diagnose
Yes.
your issues. It's a little scary to me. I mean, to be perfectly honest, because like, how do you know? I mean, is there a diploma that goes on the wall that I go and check and say, hey, this person's qualified, or is it like you said, someone goes out and takes an AI course and now thinks they're an expert in HRT? So how do you go through the
Yeah.
the
Oh
minutia?
man, it's such a good question. Again, I think there's multiple ways to evaluate that. For us at HRT University, we take it very, very, very seriously. I mean, literally my entire reputation rides on this. When we first started, we said, look, we can do something rinky dink or we can just go all in, and we went all in. So number one, we're joint accredited, which is a huge to do, meaning that if it doesn't really matter, practically speaking, if you're licensed in just about anything, if you're a medical provider of any sort, registered dietitian, physical therapist, you could take HRT University and get accredited body continuing education hours for your designated license, which is amazing. So we have 30 credit hours. It is a very tedious and it's a very expensive process, but again, it helps separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit. We are also developing our own internal certification. So not only do I want an external body, but internally, I also want to ensure that we are constantly innovating. One of the things that we take a lot of pride in is updating our courses. That's a labor of love in and of itself. Things change. RFK, I love that guy. He changes things all day long, and I'm constantly having to go back and say, hey, black box label warnings, we're removing those. The FDA said that, so we're coming in and we're going to change that part in the course and update consent forms. So little things like that, making sure our providers also aren't just ending where the course ends. Because again, now all of a sudden you're going to start seeing patients, you're going to work with clients, and you're going to come across some cases that are like, boy, this has totally got me stumped. So we're saying, hey, we have a community for you. We want to continue learning, just like you would in aesthetics. Like you never want to just assume that, well, I did one lip filler and now I'm the queen of all things. You want to continue finding what is the best way to do this. And if any new evidence is out there, I want to be the first to know. So that's our guiding light and North Star.
If
Mhm.
if you don't mind, the other component that has to fit in finances. Like,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this a financial benefit to a practice? Is it a wash? Like, kind of how does that play
Yeah.
out?
Yeah. No, I love this question. HRT is, and again, this is going to sound biased. I truly think it's probably one of the best additions you can add to your practice, period. We all know weight loss was a huge for everybody, but weight loss had a little bit of a fad to it, meaning that these companies are constantly going to innovate, these pharma companies, new drugs and whatnot, and they're just going to race to the bottom. Well, HRT is really, again, positioning itself as, hey, this is a lifelong therapy. Meaning, look, I can get anybody to lose 30 pounds, but what happens then? What happens when these medications get cheaper or whatever? HRT, kind of the nice thing is that it's already more or less commoditized. It's not really all that expensive. So these medications are relatively inexpensive. We're not just selling people meds. It's not a transactional thing anymore. What we're going to focus on is a program. We're going to say, hey, we want you to be the best versions of yourself. We want to provide hormone replacement therapy, and we can do it in a recurring revenue model where either the patients themselves are maybe paying for meds at a very low cost through you, which is fantastic, or reverse and say, hey, I'll cover all the costs of the medications. And for X amount of dollars per month, per quarter, per year, this is what you will get. And we'll have regular follow-ups. And we might do a little bit more metabolic stuff, right? We might look at fasting insulin. We could add, an in-body, scale or things of that nature. But truly, you don't need all of that to get started. What you really need is some education. You do need to have some systems around it. Of course, if you're a business owner, you understand that. That's a no-brainer. But, the profit margins across the board, if you really do HRT well and you do it the way we typically advise, you should be hitting easily 40% as a minimum on HRT. I have clinics that hit 50% without much of a problem either. So it's a very, very, very good addition to a clinic.
How do you know, the products that you're actually dispensing? How do you know if they're quality? Are they from overseas? Are they local?
Yeah.
What kind of quality? I mean, how do you figure that out?
Yeah. So, and we discussed that in great detail in the HRT University Master Course, and for good reason. So, for the most part, what we advise our providers to do is utilize compounding pharmacies, which are tremendous, and they're scattered across the United States and most of the world. At this point, we're looking for particularly 503A compounding pharmacies. And the typical vetting process is still necessary, and it ought to be, just like you would with any other product you might be purchasing. And it's actually pretty easy and straightforward. Generally speaking, if you're a compounding pharmacy listed as a 503A, you have to meet, you are not producing FDA approved medications, okay? But you still have to meet the regulations of the FDA. So there's a lot of this chatter that, somehow compounding pharmacies, they just get away with all kinds of nasty stuff and they don't have to do anything. And yet, Eli Lilly or one of these guys ends up with cat hair in their, products. And we don't, lose sleep over that. So these compounding pharmacies are fantastic. They do have their own certifying bodies. So I always forget. I think it's PCCA. They're a compounding pharmacy that is recognized as a legitimate source. Practically speaking, just like with all our medications, whether you like to know this or not, it's all coming from China as far as the base products go. But what is not happening is these products are not being produced in China. So to be clear, if we're getting testosterone, the molecule, that might come from bulk from China, and that's been done that way for eons at this point. But it's coming to the United States, and these compounding pharmacies are themselves actually creating the end product, which is usually coming from U.S. sourced ingredients. So that would be bases and creams and gel capsules and things of that nature. So again, the quality side of things is way, 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 way higher standard than, say, research use only peptides, which is a whole nother category, right? That's where things can get a little more shady. Whereas with the HRT world, truly going through compounding pharmacies is, number one, a great way to make sure financially things stay afloat. And number two, making sure that you can get a multitude of different products that fit your patient's needs.
Okay, so now I've got the products, I've got my education, I bring it to the practice. Do you suggest when you're doing something like this to have someone that's solely focused on HRT?
It's the best question. Yes, I do. So again, from an aesthetics point of view, especially if you're a solo owner, or clinic owner, or aesthetics provider, it's going to be very, very difficult to have both of your feet in these two different worlds. HRT, in and of itself, it requires a little bit more hand-holding, right? You're playing medicine now. I'm not saying you're not playing medicine in some way with the procedures, but generally speaking, procedures done, patient leaves, there really ain't a whole lot to do until they come back. HRT, it's a constant ebb and flow. patients, we increase the dose, we add something new, they might have some side effects, no big deal, we can work with that, but there's messages, there's refills involved, so that there's a little bit more to do on that front. So I highly recommend, if you're a solo clinic owner, you should absolutely consider hiring someone in to do this role. If you have other providers in your clinic and say one is just not that busy and he or she just loves the idea of the wellness side and doing more the medical rather than the procedural stuff, that is a great person to say, hey, we would love you to be, the lead here on the HRT and wellness side of things.
Give us a little bit about yourself and the HRT University and kind of
Yeah.
where they can find you. Because again, and I guess the other question is, let's say now I'm a patient. I'm going to put my patient hat on, and
Mhm.
I'm looking for an office. And I've heard you talk, and I'm like, this guy knows his stuff. I believe everything. How do I find who's been to the HRT University? Because that
Mhm.
seems like the best qualification to me
Yeah.
across the board.
Well, thank you. You're reading my mind here. So, to be fair, we are working on that as we speak. We're working on what's called a provider directory. So, if you are in fact an HRT University graduate and all that sorts of stuff, we will have a provider directory, and that's for also providers and for patients, right? So we have providers all the time who say, "Hey, I got a friend in Northern California. I'm over here in New York State. I need to find someone who can take care of this guy." So you'll be able to go to that directory. Same for patients. So absolutely. And again, that we plan for that to be the gold standard when you're looking for HRT as a patient or provider. As far as your other part of the question goes, again, I am extremely, extremely passionate about HRT. I live it and I breathe it every single day. And my biggest passion really comes from Kevin, this idea that I think everybody ought to have tremendous access to this type of care. I jokingly said, I think HRT is like the iPhone of medicine. When the iPhone first came out, I even remember thinking, God, this looks so stupid. There's no way this is going to take off. And I couldn't imagine my life without one, and the millions and millions and millions of people across the world who maybe feel the same way. I think that's what HRT is. I think it's something beautiful. I think it's been around for a while, and it's finally getting its recognition. But like you said, there's a lot of noise and a lot of confusion. And I would love to be just one bit of the cog in the wheel that helps HRT get to a point in which every person, including my daughters and their kids and so forward, have access to this type of care. So, HRT University, we call it the master course within HRT University. That is our creme de la creme. It is the A to Z of everything you would ever possibly need to know when it comes to hormone replacement therapy for men and women. And I won't bore you guys with too much details. To HRTuniversity.com. You can kind of scale through the entire course and kind of get a sense of it. But, literally it's broken down module by module. We created it for business providers and owners because, I understand our time is precious. So you can immediately access it. It's self-paced. So this is not something where you have to take a bunch of time off. Most of my clinicians who go through the course, they're moms, they're dads, they're running to soccer games and stuff, and they're literally just plugging in their phone with my course on and listening to it in the car, or while they're doing their workout in the morning. So we made all the videos kind of bite-sized. So it's not 3-hour videos or things like that. You can literally jump in at any moment. Say you want to skip ahead to one section or the other, you can do that. It's not all locked up. We want it to be highly accessible, and it's a course that people just keep coming back to. We regularly update it, so we tell people all the time, hey, don't forget to check out this new section in the module where Nico talked about RFK's, recent advances here and stuff like that. So, but literally, full module on male hormone replacement therapy, which is really testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT. We have a female module, and then we have an advanced female module. So literally how to treat a woman A to Z from any age. And then the advanced female module comes in with, what about cases like PCOS, endometriosis, premenstrual dysphoric disorder? We have a full thyroid module. We go into adjunct hormones. So oxytocin, DHEA, pregnenolone, what are all these other hormones and how can we use them? Yeah, we touch on those too. And then again, we have a community. So again, we want people to be in a place where they feel loved and appreciated. There's so many of these terrible Facebook groups that it's just a good place to get your feelings hurt. And you ask a question and you just get dogged the whole time. And this really just, it's providers who love each other and they want to learn. They want to grow. They want to be the best absolutely out there. And so that's been a breath of fresh air. It's frankly most everybody's favorite part. I'll end with we have something called Pearl, which is one of my pride and joys. So speaking of AI, I understand AI's here and it's here to stay. So, we love our human connection, but I also understand that there are providers who live halfway across the world and they have questions and they need a mentor and a guide, and they can't just email me or text me all day long. So we create Pearl, who is our AI mentor. And she understands the course backwards and forwards. Every single podcast, anything I've ever spoken out loud or written, she knows. So it's like having a little mini Nico inside your pocket. And at any time you can ask Pearl, hey, I've got a question. She might take you to that course. She might take you to a Q&A call we had. She may refer to a podcast, and then she'll give you in writing exactly what you're looking for. So that has really alleviated a lot of that. Well, I took the course, but now what? Now if I have a question, we've really stripped that away. And then again, if you still want to get on with me on a personal call and stuff, we have a membership where there's some opportunity there too.
If I'm a patient, I want to go, do I have to go see you in person? Do I have to make an appointment, or how does this work?
Great question, Kevin. So one of the beauties of HRT, and even in the weight loss industry, we've seen this, is that this can all be done telehealth or virtual health remotely. Most providers, myself included, we're virtual at this point now. There's a lot of medicine, aesthetics being one, that you definitely need to be or ought to be in person. But when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, most of it is based on lab results, going over those together in great detail, going over your personal history, medical, and whatever, and then ultimately coming up with a diagnosis and a care plan. And then we typically, most clinics, what they'll do anyways is ship you your medications. So again, it's kind of a concierge white glove kind of feel where you don't even have to leave your couch. I mean, these meds will come to you usually in a couple days, and you can get started, and you never have to deal with Walgreens BS or any of that types of stuff. So it's kind of a nice treat.
For someone to find you, HRTUniversity.com is where we want to direct everyone. So, and
That's
they
the
can
way.
connect.
That's the way. I have a daily email and I have an Instagram and all that kinds of stuff. Daily email is really popular with clinicians specifically. I just talk about a lot of education stuff there too. No BS or sales stuff there. So it's really just education heavy. But yeah, HRTUniversity.com. If you go there, you'll find all those resources.
Well, again, Nico, I really do want to thank you. I know this is a hot topic in today's environment. I get questioned, and even I'm thinking, like, I'm mid-50s, so I got to like figure out what I'm going to do in my life. And it was eye-opening to hear and listen to you talk about HRT and kind of really how it's grown and how I want to say it's legitimate. I mean, it's really kind of become more of a science-based. And I think that everyone needs to take away that this is something they need to really look at and most likely integrate into most practices out there, because this is the future and we're going to continue to move in this direction. So if you're looking for Nico, HRTUniversity.com, please reach out to them. It'll be a great way to kind of, get yourself better educated. Listen, I'm also a big believer. The more education we all have, the better it is for the patients, for us, for everyone across the board. So, go get educated, give Nico a contact, and let's add more HRT to the market out there. But Nico, I do want to thank you a lot, taking the time today and getting on and giving us a little education, and that was fantastic. So,
Oh, I
any
appreciate it.
last words? Anything you should say to the world that comes out and goes, "What's your lasting impression?"
Yeah, I mean, basically jump in. The water's warm, guys. There's no need to hold on. If you're a patient or a provider, jump in. The water is warm. It's here to stay. It's a great thing for you, and you won't regret it. You'll look back and be very thankful that you jumped in during this time. So, and Kevin, I want to say especially thank you to you guys and the Monarch crew. You guys have been tremendous. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that's it, everyone. We'll see you at the next coffee with Kevin. And again, thank you, Nico, for getting on, and we'll see you soon.